My fiancée told me she needed a mental health weekend to reset before the big day. Turns out her reset was a cabin trip with some guy from her gym. You know how I found out? His girlfriend called me. Said she found my number on his phone under Uber Eats. So there I was, 3 weeks before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, when my fiancée Rachel drops this bomb on me. She's standing in our kitchen making her morning smoothie like nothing's changed. But then she turns around with this weird expression and tells me she needs a mental health weekend. Just like that. Says the wedding planning has been overwhelming her and she needs to reset her mind before the big day. Now look, I'm not some caveman who doesn't understand mental health. We've both been stressed about the wedding costs, dealing with her mother's constant opinions about everything from the flowers to the font on the invitations. Rachel had been working extra shifts at the hospital where she's a nurse, and I'd been pulling overtime at the construction company trying to pay for this whole circus. So when she said she needed space, part of me actually felt relieved that she was taking care of herself. She told me she'd booked this little cabin up in the mountains, someplace she found online that specialized in digital detox retreats. No phones, no internet, just nature and meditation and whatever other hippie stuff helps people find their center. She'd be gone Friday through Sunday, back in time for our final cake tasting on Monday. Made perfect sense to me. The weird part was how secretive she got about the whole thing. When I asked which cabin service she used, she got all vague and said she'd deleted the emails already. When I offered to drive her up there, she insisted she needed to make the journey alone as part of the whole experience. Even asked me not to try reaching out to her over the weekend because the whole point was disconnecting from everything. What really should have tipped me off was how she started acting the week before she left. Rachel had always been the type to plan everything down to the minute, but suddenly she was being super casual about details. Usually she'd have printed out maps, backup directions, emergency contact numbers for wherever she was going. This time she just threw some clothes in a bag and said she'd figure it out when she got there. I spent that Friday night playing video games and eating pizza straight from the box, living like a bachelor one last time before becoming a married man. Saturday, I went to my buddy Kevin's house to help him fix his deck. We had a few beers and talked about how marriage changes you. The usual stuff guys talk about when they're pretending they understand relationships. Kevin mentioned that his wife had been acting strange lately too, staying late at work and being secretive about her phone. We joked about how women get weird right before big life changes, like it's some kind of biological programming that makes them want to test the relationship before committing. Looking back, that conversation was more prophetic than either of us realized. Sunday evening comes around, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about giving Rachel her space. I'm thinking maybe I should do this kind of thing more often. Let her have her girl time while I have my guy time. I even stopped by the grocery store to pick up ingredients for her favorite pasta dish. Figured I'd surprise her with dinner when she got back. But Sunday night turns into Monday morning, and Rachel's not back yet. I shoot her a text asking if everything's okay, knowing she probably won't see it until she's back in civilization. Monday afternoon rolls around, and still nothing. I call the place where we're supposed to do the cake tasting and reschedule for Tuesday, making excuses about traffic and family emergencies. By Monday evening, I'm starting to get that sick feeling in my stomach. Not panic exactly, but something's definitely off. Rachel's always been punctual to a fault. She once showed up to a surprise party 30 minutes early because she was worried about being late. So this whole not coming back when she said she would thing is completely out of character. I spend Monday night channel surfing and checking my phone every 5 minutes. Tuesday morning, I'm pacing around the apartment like a caged animal. I try calling her phone, but it goes straight to voicemail. I even consider driving up to the mountains myself, but I realize I have no idea which cabin she went to or even which mountain town she's in. That's when my phone rings Tuesday afternoon, and everything I thought I knew about my life gets turned completely upside down. The caller ID shows a number I don't recognize, and for a split second I think it might be Rachel calling from some landline at the cabin. Instead, it's about to be the worst conversation of my life. The voice on the other end is female, older than Rachel, with this rough smoker's rasp that immediately puts me on edge. She asks if this is Danny, and when I say yes, she tells me her name is Linda, and she needs to talk to me about something important. My first thought is that something terrible has happened to Rachel, maybe an accident in the mountains, and this woman is calling from a hospital. But then Linda says something that makes my blood run cold. She tells me she found my number in her boyfriend's phone, saved under the contact name Uber Eats. She found it weird that he'd have a food delivery service stored under a person's name, so she decided to call and see what was going on. I'm standing there holding the phone, trying to process what she's telling me, when Linda continues. She says her boyfriend's name is Trevor. He's a personal trainer at some gym called Iron Paradise, and according to his text messages, he's been up at a cabin in the mountains since Friday with someone named Rachel. She found the conversation thread where they're planning this whole weekend getaway, talking about how excited they are to finally have time alone together. The room starts spinning around me. I have to sit down on the couch because my legs feel like they're going to give out. Linda's still talking, telling me how she's been suspicious of Trevor for months, how he's been working late and going on these mysterious business trips that never quite add up. She found hotel receipts in his gym bag, restaurant bills for 2 people when he claimed he was eating alone. But here's where the story gets really twisted. Linda tells me she drove up to the cabin herself, and she's been watching them for the past 2 days. She gives me the address and describes everything she's seen. Rachel and Trevor walking around the property holding hands, cooking breakfast together on the deck, taking showers in the outdoor setup behind the cabin. Linda describes Rachel perfectly, down to the little scar on her chin and the way she twirls her hair when she's thinking. But then she tells me something that makes my stomach drop even further. She says this isn't their first trip together, and she has proof going back almost a year. Hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, even vacation photos she found on Trevor's laptop. The worst part is what Linda tells me next. She says she confronted Trevor about the affair 6 months ago, and he promised to end things with Rachel. But instead of ending it, they just got better at hiding it. Trevor started using different credit cards, booking places under fake names, even got a second phone that Linda didn't know about until she found it hidden in his gym locker. Linda asks me if I knew about any of this, and when I tell her no, she gets quiet for a long time. Finally, she says she's sorry to be the one to break it to me, but she figured I deserved to know before I married someone who's been living a double life. But then she drops another bombshell that nearly makes me drop the phone. She tells me Rachel and Trevor have been talking about moving in together after my wedding. The plan was for Rachel to go through with marrying me, then file for divorce a few months later and take half of everything I own. Linda found emails between them discussing how much money Rachel could get out of the settlement, and they'd been researching divorce lawyers together. This whole mental health weekend wasn't just about sneaking around for a few days. It was their final planning session before Rachel came back and started the process of destroying my life. They'd been treating my upcoming marriage like some kind of business transaction, a way for Rachel to secure financial stability before running off with her trainer boyfriend. Linda tells me she's planning to confront Trevor when he gets back, and she's going to show him all the evidence she's gathered about his cheating. But she also warns me that Rachel's probably going to come home with some story about having an amazing breakthrough during her retreat. Maybe even suggest that the weekend helped her realize how much she loves me and wants to make our marriage work. After I hang up, I just sit there staring at the wall for what feels like hours. Everything from the past year starts making sense in this horrible way. All those canceled dinner plans because Rachel was too tired. The way she'd take her phone into the bathroom when she showered. How she suddenly developed this interest in fitness and started talking about getting a gym membership at Iron Paradise. I remember one night about 8 months ago when she came home with this glow about her, like she'd had the best day of her life. She claimed it was because they'd saved someone in the emergency room, but now I'm wondering if that was the first time she and Trevor hooked up. The thought makes me want to punch a hole through the wall. But instead of getting angry, I start planning. Because I'm not going to confront Rachel based on some stranger's phone call, and I'm definitely not going to let her come back and manipulate me into going through with this wedding. I need to see this for myself, need to catch them in the act, so there's no way either of them can lie their way out of it. I call in sick to work Wednesday morning and drive up to the mountains. Linda had given me detailed directions to the cabin, along with a description of both vehicles parked there. The drive takes about 2 hours through winding mountain roads, and the whole time I'm rehearsing what I'm going to say when I confront them. The cabin is exactly where Linda said it would be, tucked back in the woods at the end of a gravel road that winds through pine trees for about a mile. It's one of those expensive rustic places that costs more per night than I make in a week, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces, the kind of romantic getaway people use for anniversary trips and proposals. Rachel's car is parked next to a black pickup truck that must belong to Trevor. I park my car down the road behind some trees where they won't see it and walk back through the woods to get a better view of the place. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears, and part of me is still hoping this is all some massive misunderstanding. But then I see them through the big picture window in the living room. Rachel's wearing this red dress I bought her for her birthday last year, the one she said was too fancy to wear anywhere. She's sitting on Trevor's lap on the couch, feeding him something from a plate, both of them laughing like they don't have a care in the world. Trevor's exactly what you'd expect from a personal trainer. Tall, muscular, with that perfectly styled hair and the kind of smile that probably gets him whatever he wants. He's got his arms wrapped around Rachel like she belongs to him, and she's looking at him the way she used to look at me when we first started dating. I watched them for about 10 minutes, taking photos with my phone as evidence, when I notice something that makes my blood boil. Rachel's wearing a necklace I've never seen before, something expensive looking with diamonds that catch the light from the fireplace. Trevor keeps touching it, and saying something that makes her laugh and kiss him. Then they get up and start walking toward what must be the bedroom, and I can't watch anymore. But instead of leaving, I decide I need more evidence than just photos through a window. I need to get inside that cabin and find out exactly how long this has been going on and what else they've been planning. I wait until they're clearly occupied in the bedroom. Then I check the cars first. Rachel always keeps her car unlocked because she says our neighborhood is safe. And sure enough, the doors aren't locked. I pop the trunk and find a weekend bag filled with lingerie I've never seen before, stuff that definitely wasn't purchased for our relationship. But that's not the worst part. Hidden under the spare tire is a folder full of documents that make me realize this whole thing is even more calculated than I thought. There are printouts of our joint bank account statements, copies of my life insurance policy, and research about community property laws in our state. Rachel hasn't just been cheating on me. She's been systematically planning to take me for everything I'm worth. There are notes in her handwriting about asset division, questions about whether she'd be entitled to half my construction company if we got divorced, even research about whether she could claim alimony based on her lower income. The folder also contains something that nearly makes me throw up right there in the parking area. It's a timeline written in Rachel's careful nurse handwriting, outlining the entire plan from start to finish. The mental health weekend was just step 1. Step 2 was coming back refreshed and loving, going through with the wedding ceremony. Step 3 was a 6-month period of being the perfect wife while secretly meeting with divorce lawyers. Step 4 was filing papers and taking me for half of everything. But the most devastating part is at the bottom of the timeline. In Rachel's handwriting, it says, "Tell Danny about the pregnancy after the divorce is final so he can't claim paternity and interfere with custody." Rachel is pregnant. And from the timeline, it's clearly Trevor's baby, not mine. They've been planning to use this pregnancy as leverage in the divorce, probably to get more money in child support, even though the baby isn't mine. The whole thing is so calculated and cruel that I have to lean against the car to keep from falling over. I'm still processing this information when I hear the front door of the cabin open. Rachel and Trevor come walking out onto the porch, and they're talking about driving into town to pick up dinner. I duck down behind the cars and watch them get into Trevor's truck and drive away. This is my chance to get inside the cabin and see what else I can find. The front door is unlocked, which shouldn't surprise me since they think they're completely alone up here. The place is exactly what you'd expect for a romantic getaway. There's a fire going in the fireplace, candles lit everywhere, rose petals scattered on the floor leading from the living room to the bedroom. In the bedroom, I find even more evidence than I know what to do with. There are photos scattered on the nightstand, pictures of Rachel and Trevor together at places I recognize, but never went to with her. The beach vacation she told me was a girls' trip with her coworkers. The wine country weekend she claimed was a nursing conference. Even a photo from what looks like a doctor's office, with Rachel holding up an ultrasound image while Trevor kisses her cheek. But the thing that really destroys me is sitting on the dresser. It's a small velvet box containing a diamond engagement ring that's way more expensive than the one I gave Rachel. There's a card with it, written in Trevor's handwriting, asking Rachel to marry him after her divorce is final. That's when I realize this isn't just some affair that got out of hand. This is a long-term con game, and I've been the mark from the very beginning. Rachel never loved me. She picked me because I have a successful business and she thought I'd be easy to manipulate. The whole relationship, the engagement, even agreeing to marry me was all part of an elaborate plan to get money and security while she built a real life with someone else. I'm still standing in that bedroom holding the engagement ring when I hear Trevor's truck coming back up the gravel road. There's nowhere to hide and no way to get out without them seeing me, so I decide to stay and face this head on. I put the ring back in its box and sit down on the bed to wait for them. They walk through the front door laughing about something, and it takes them a few seconds to notice me sitting in the bedroom. When Rachel sees me, her face goes completely white, and she drops the bag of food they brought back from town. But instead of looking guilty or ashamed, she immediately goes into damage control mode. Rachel starts with the fake concerned wife routine, asking me what I'm doing here and if everything's okay at home. She tells me she was worried when I didn't answer her text messages, which is hilarious since she never sent any. Then she tries to introduce Trevor as just a friend who offered to let her stay at his cabin when her original retreat plans fell through. But I'm holding all the evidence I found in her car, and there are ultrasound photos on the nightstand behind me. So instead of listening to her lies, I start reading from her timeline out loud. The whole plan, step by step, including the part about the pregnancy and the fake paternity claim. Rachel's face goes through about 6 different expressions as I read, from confusion to panic to resignation. Trevor just stands there looking like he wants to run, but he's trapped between me and the only exit. When I finish reading, the cabin gets completely quiet except for the crackling of the fire in the other room. That's when Rachel makes the mistake of trying to turn this whole thing around on me. She starts crying and says she only started seeing Trevor because I was emotionally unavailable and focused too much on work. She claimed she was going to tell me about the affair before the wedding, but she was scared of how I'd react. But then she really goes off the rails. She tells me the baby might actually be mine, and we could work things out if I'm willing to forgive her and go to couples counseling. She says Trevor means nothing to her, that he was just filling an emotional void, and she realizes now that I'm the one she really wants to be with. Trevor doesn't take this very well. He starts yelling at Rachel, calling her a liar and reminding her about all the plans they made together. He pulls out his phone and starts showing me text messages where Rachel tells him she's disgusted by me and can't wait to be free of our relationship. The two of them start fighting with each other, and I'm just sitting there watching my fiancée and her boyfriend tear each other apart. Rachel accuses Trevor of pressuring her into the whole scheme, says it was his idea to wait until after the wedding to maximize the divorce settlement. Trevor fires back that Rachel was the one who suggested using the pregnancy to get more money, even though they both know the timing means the baby can't be mine. That's when I learned something that makes this whole situation even more twisted. Trevor isn't the only guy Rachel's been seeing. During their fight, he mentioned someone named Mike who works at the hospital with Rachel, and how he found hotel receipts for dates when Trevor thought Rachel was with me. Rachel has been running a three-way con game, playing me, Trevor, and this Mike guy against each other. She's been telling each of us different stories, collecting money and gifts from all of us, and planning to string us along until she figured out which one would be most profitable to marry and divorce. The pregnancy could belong to any of the three of us, and Rachel's been planning to do paternity tests after the baby is born to see which father would be required to pay the most child support. The whole thing is so calculated and sociopathic that I can't even process it. I stand up and tell both of them that they deserve each other, and I walk out of the cabin. But as I'm getting in my car, Trevor comes running after me. He tells me he had no idea about Mike or about how deep Rachel's manipulation went. He thought he was rescuing her from an unhappy relationship, not participating in some elaborate fraud scheme. Trevor actually apologizes and offers to testify if I want to pursue legal action against Rachel. He says Linda was right to be suspicious, and he's planning to break up with Rachel as soon as I leave. Apparently, finding out you're one of multiple men being scammed by the same woman is a real relationship killer. I drive back to the city and immediately call a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, since we're not married yet, but someone who specializes in fraud cases. It turns out that what Rachel did could be considered criminal fraud, especially the part about lying about paternity to get money. When I get home, I start packing up all of Rachel's stuff and putting it in boxes by the front door. I also call the wedding venue and cancel everything, losing most of our deposits, but not caring anymore. I call my parents and tell them the wedding is off, and when they ask why, I give them the whole story. My dad, who never really liked Rachel anyway, just says he's proud of me for finding out before the wedding instead of after. My mom starts crying, but not for the reasons you'd expect. She's crying because she's relieved she won't have to pretend to like Rachel anymore. Rachel comes home Sunday night and finds her belongings waiting for her in the hallway. She tries to talk to me, wants to explain everything and see if we can work things out. She's dropped the fake pregnancy story and admits the baby is probably Trevor's, but she says she made a mistake and wants to give our relationship another chance. I tell her there's nothing to explain and nothing to work out. I give her back the engagement ring and tell her she has until the end of the week to get the rest of her stuff and find somewhere else to live. I also let her know that my lawyer is reviewing everything for possible fraud charges. That's when Rachel finally drops the Innocent Victim Act and shows me who she really is. She starts screaming at me, calling me names, and threatening to ruin my business if I try to press charges. She tells me I was boring and predictable, and she never loved me anyway. She says Trevor was better in bed, and Mike has more money, and I should be grateful someone like her was willing to settle for me, even temporarily. It's like watching a mask come off. The sweet, caring nurse I thought I was in love with disappears completely, replaced by this cold, calculating person who saw me as nothing more than a bank account with legs. I record the whole conversation on my phone, figuring it might be useful if things get legal. 3 months later, I'm sitting in a lawyer's office watching Rachel get arrested for fraud. It turns out Mike from the hospital filed charges too, and between the two cases, prosecutors had enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. Trevor ended up being a key witness, and Linda provided documentation of all the financial records she'd found. Rachel pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, but she had to pay restitution to both me and Mike for the money she'd stolen or obtained through false pretenses. She also lost her nursing license and had to move back in with her parents in another state. The baby turned out to be Trevor's after all, and Linda decided to stay with him and help raise the child. Apparently, having a baby with someone else was the wake-up call Trevor needed to get his life together. They seem happy now, which is more than I can say for Rachel. As for me, I'm doing better than I ever expected. The whole experience taught me to pay attention to red flags and trust my instincts when something feels off. I started dating again about 6 months later, and I met someone named Sarah who works at the bank where I have my business accounts. Sarah knows the whole story about Rachel, and she's been patient with me as I learned to trust again. We've been together for 8 months now, and she's nothing like Rachel. She's honest, straightforward, and when she says she's going somewhere, that's actually where she goes. The funny thing is, I'm actually grateful this whole nightmare happened before the wedding instead of after. Can you imagine being legally married to someone running that kind of long-term scam? The divorce would have cost me everything, and I'd probably still be paying child support for a kid that isn't even mine. Instead, I learned something valuable about the kind of person I want to spend my life with, and I got rid of someone who would have destroyed me financially and emotionally. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing in disguise. These days when I tell this story to people, they can't believe someone would go to such elaborate lengths to scam multiple people at once. But I've learned that there are people out there who see relationships as business opportunities, and they're willing to lie and manipulate for years to get what they want. The important thing is recognizing the warning signs early and trusting yourself when something doesn't feel right. If your partner suddenly becomes secretive, starts making excuses for unexplained time away, or begins asking questions about your finances that seem out of character, pay attention to those red flags. Rachel's biggest mistake was getting too greedy and trying to run the same scam on too many people at once. If she'd just focused on one victim instead of 3, she might have gotten away with it. Lucky for me, Trevor, and Mike, her ambition was bigger than her ability to keep track of all her lies. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.